Let's try that again. Good afternoon. One more time. Good afternoon. You guys, let's start this right. Stand up. Stand up. Welcome back. Welcome back. Oh, I love the music. Clap it up. Get some energy in here. Clap it up. I'm watching. Everybody scream! Good afternoon! Hands up! Spread your fingers. It matters. It matters. Wiggle them around. Say yes! Yes! Say thank you! Say yes! Damn, this is a good crowd. Give yourself a hand. All right. The man that we need to hear from today, he's going to talk about energy, focus, performance. He is going to make us rethink our last night choices. Here we go. If we ever needed a man like this to train us, the day is the day. Today is the day. We have to get strategic on human performance. This man is one of the top performance coaches on the planet. He is the founder of Own It. He is a coach that focuses on success-focused, holistic coaching. He coaches pro athletes, business owners, and top 500 executives all around the world. What I love about this man is he's gonna get strategic on your emotional state, your mental focus, your physical strength, and your spirituality. This is what we all need right now. So please welcome to the stage one of the top performance coaches on the planet, Justin Roethlingshoefer. Give him a hand.
Author, mentor, and coach, Justin Roethlingshoefer.
Justin Roethlingshoefer.
Justin Roethlingshoefer.
Justin Roethlingshoefer.
My name is Justin Roethlingshoefer, and for more than a decade, I managed the health, wellness, and performance of the best athletes in the world until a failure to do so for myself almost cost me my life. It's for that reason that I realized that performance can only be realized when health is optimized, and I set off to solve this problem for not just athletes, but high-achieving people pursuing a mission and leading, just like you.
We don't know how our body's handling stress and strain mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. We don't know the language of the thing that we're living in. So if we don't know the language of the thing we're living in, we can't articulate it, how are we supposed to steward it? If we don't understand it, there's no way to steward it.
Your body has a language, and you may or may not have ever heard this, but that language is HRV.
And HRV is now the key indicator, that guide, that language that we can communicate and understand where we are any given day.
So when you look at HRV, heart rate variability is what it stands for.
That chronic illness, leading cause of death in the United States is earned. You either earn your health or you earn your disease. You take a choice.
You can own your health and live a life by design. You can own your health, but it starts with choosing different.
Health is the ultimate form of wealth, and time is the asset. When we truly do have our health, ultimately the asset is protected, which is time.
What's up, Real? How we doing? I love the energy in this room. I've been here, I kind of like to just be behind the scenes whenever I step into a room and start speaking. And the energy in this room has been spectacular since day one, and I want to continue this in today. Okay, I want to continue this in and keep this going. And so I've got two asks, and then I've got two promises. My first ask is, I love to be engaged throughout this entire thing. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to reach out. I want to have energy and interaction back and forth. And number two is, I want to make sure that we're showing up in level 5. That honesty area. Not honest to me, not honest to the company, but honest to yourselves. Okay, honest to yourselves. And that's how we're going to ultimately create something unique and different. Now here's my two promises. How many people, and again, it's after lunch, maybe letting the food settle a little bit, but how many people, and we can stand when this is you, How many people left behind a spouse to be here? Stand up if that's you. Stay standing. How many people stay standing. How many people left behind kids to be here? Stay standing even with your spouse. How many people left behind a business to be here? I'm sure now everybody, right? Hopefully, hopefully. Well, I did the same thing. I left behind my family to be here. And when we started our company, Own It, the biggest thing we wanted to be was different in the health, wellness, and performance space. We wanted to show up in a unique way and make something that was personalized to each and every person so that they could ultimately show up different. And so what a shame it would be if we came here and we spent time away from our family, away from our spouses, away from our businesses, and didn't leave and walk out these doors different. And so that's the challenge I have to you. And I promise you, if you stay engaged with me, if you stay in with me here, you are going to leave with a different mindset, you are going to leave with a different thought process, and you are going to leave with different outcomes. Can we get behind that? I love it. All right. All right. The second promise, you can be seated. You can be seated. I feel like we're in church. Second promise is that I'm going to make this personalized to you. I'm not just going to throw out a bunch of ideas. I'm not going to throw out a bunch of random thoughts. I'm going to make sure that each and every one of you can walk out of here with the exact blueprint, the exact understanding of what it is that you need to do next. And so I have a question for you. What is your definition of performance? Throw out some words. Throw out some words. Optimal health. Optimal health, cool. Energy, cool. What else? Performance. Feel good. Realize your thoughts. Resilience. Winning. Results. Great. I love all those words. Consistency. You know what? That's the next slide, and I love it. I love all those words. But here's the thing. A lot of the things that we heard are all outcomes. They're all outcomes. And we forget that there's a process that we have to go through in order to make sure that outcomes are something that we desire. And so I've got this new definition that I want us to understand here. The definition of performance is the capacity and desire to intentionally and consistently behave at a level equal to our mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional potential. I want to highlight two words here: desire and capacity. Everybody has the desire to have a big business, to get the new listing, to have the big sale, to have the energy, to sleep really well, to have the influence, to have the stage, to have the community. But not all of us have the capacity. It's not a desire issue, it's a capacity issue. And it starts with intentional and consistent behaviors that, done over the course of time, create an outcome that's inevitable. Whatever you desire is not hard to get. It's actually very simple. But we fail to have the capacity in order to get there. And so when we think about this, everybody wants to perform. Everybody wants to show up. Everybody wants it, but are we willing to do what it takes? Are we willing to be different? I want you to look to your person to your left and say, I'm different. Now look to the person to your other left and say, I'm different. I got it. I love it. I love it. Left, right? We'll figure it out. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Health precedes performance. Health precedes performance, not the other way around. How many people think they perform really, really well, even better when they're sick? Not me. You think you have a great capacity, but all of a sudden you get a cold or a flu and that capacity shrinks down to the size of a gnat. You think you've got a great capacity, but then all of a sudden you have a poor night's sleep and you all of a sudden can't show up and think clearly. Health precedes capacity. We've got desires that look like this. Desires that look like this, but then capacities that look like this. This is what our systems look like. And yet we wonder why we have the outcomes that we do. We wonder why we can't wake up energized. We wonder why we are constantly in brain fog. We wonder why we all of a sudden wake up, have a great idea, and walk to the next room and forget why we're there. For the last 15 years, I had the privilege of being health and performance director in the National Hockey League, and really started to create a system that was different, a system that was unique, that looked at data to run and make decisions and build systems off of rather than feelings and conveniences. And over the course of that decade, I started to live a certain way, even though I was managing and optimizing the health, wellness, and performance of the best athletes in the world. I failed to do that for myself. And in 2019, 2020, I started to end up with this deep level of fatigue, this deep level of brain fog that I couldn't get rid of. I had stomach aches chronically, and I couldn't figure out what it was. I went and got all my testing done. All the docs told me I was the picture of health, exactly what you should look like. This is what it looks like to be a performance director in the NHL. This is what it looks like to have a wife in another country or another city that you're trying to stay connected with. This is what the stress looks like. But all of a sudden, I went to a doc up in New York City. They ran a couple of procedures, and they said, Justin, if you had not been so persistent, you wouldn't have seen your 35th birthday. Had an ulcer the size of a quarter in my stomach and 7 polyps the size of my thumb, all precancerous. That outcome was earned. It was earned because of my habits, my behaviors, and my lifestyle. A failure to lean in. And all of a sudden, I realized that this was not an athlete issue that I was solving, but rather a human issue. And if we're really honest with ourselves, we'll realize this is the exact same issue, just a different profession. What are we chasing after? And what is the cost and expense of what it is that we're doing? You realize that you've won the money game, or you've won the family game, or you've won the real estate game, you've won the career game, but you've lost the life game. And you flipped it. Because at the end of the day, you earn your health or you earn your illness. And it's your decision. Based upon the habits, behaviors, and lifestyles that you put together in a system that you step forward into. And the crazy part about this is as soon as you stop chasing and you get your order correct, you get your priorities correct, everything you've been chasing suddenly starts to chase you. Don't let that go over your head. As soon as you start getting your priorities right and you put things in the proper order, everything that you've been chasing starts to chase you. And so, about 5 years ago, in this exact hotel, I met your president, Mr. Sharon. And I've watched what he's built over the last year and a half, 2 years. And when I first met Sharon, Sharon was not the energetic, lively person that he was today because of some of the habits, behaviors, and lifestyles that he had in his life. And he wanted to create a change. And I had the privilege of being able to work with him very closely to create, ultimately, the outcome that has been inevitable in which the man that you see up here today. He's always had that. It's just he didn't have the capacity. When we started working with Ryan Searhand, the guy was out there, he was pushing, he was doing everything that he wanted, but how has he been able to build an empire? Well, he has the capacity. You start to see Mark Zuckerberg, you start to see Grant Cardone, you start to see these people who are doing everything that you desire at the level in which you desire. It's not because they're smarter, it's not because they're more resourced, it's not because they have a deeper calling on their life. It is simply because they've built a system that has improved the capacity for them to be able to handle what it ultimately requires and put a system that will create the inevitability that is available to each and every person in this room. And they've understood this simple premise. If you look up here, the upper left quadrant is this overreaching phase. You want to build a business? You want to build a family? You want to get fit? You want to do anything? You're going to live in this overreaching space. That's where stress lives. That's where overreaching has to happen. We have to stress in order to grow. But what those people on the other screen have realized is that in order to play there, in order to operate there, you also have to operate in this bottom right-hand quadrant, which is the regeneration quadrant. Rest and recovery. You stress and you recover. You stress and you recover. And you build this life by design that allows this rhythm to start to happen so that you can perform on a regular basis in this area called ownership, where we're creative, where we're clear-minded, where we're energetic. And that is where performance becomes optimized. When I use the word optimized, I don't mean perfect. I mean the pursuit of better. And all of us should be pursuing optimization. We're trying to optimize our businesses. We're trying to optimize our family. We're trying to optimize our time. We're trying to optimize our schedules. Why would we not optimize our bodies? The one thing that has an impact and a control of where we're going. But the crazy part about it is that what our world tells us is, no, you just have to keep pushing. You have to keep overreaching. You have to keep doing more and more and more and more and more and more. If you're not doing more, you're going to miss out and you're going to fall behind. But what that keeps us in is the upper right-hand quadrant and forces us down into this lower left burnout space. And that's where about 75% of us operate. We know what that's like. And so when we think about this, I want to drive back to what are these signs of a life by default? Before I do, I've got another question. What is the most important thing in this world to you? Shout it out. I hear wealth, I hear family, I hear kids, health, time, your life, freedom. Now let's say I was to take your kids from you. Or let's say I was to take your health from you. Or let's say I was to take your freedom from you. What would you give to get it back? What would you give to get it back? Everything and anything. The two answers I always hear. So if you already have all of these things, why would you not manage them better? And so I want to show you what a life of default looks like and how do we get into a life by design. So the first thing is our bodies don't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional stress. They don't know the difference between real or perceived. They don't know the difference between positive or negative. All they understand is stress. And our body has a certain capacity. A certain capacity. Just like this water bottle right here. This water bottle has a certain capacity. And at a certain point, open up another one. At a certain point, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress, real, perceived, positive, negative, there's a season where it starts to pour in. And it starts to overflow. And unless we have habits, behaviors, and lifestyles that ultimately poke holes in this can to allow it to flow out so it can take on more water, it will continue to overflow. And the sad part about it is that we stay in this state, we stay in this area, and we justify it. And so the way we build capacity is not by turning faucets off. I don't want you to work less. I don't want you to say, well, this is just life. What am I supposed to do? No, the faucets are going to stay on, friends. I want to poke more holes and live intentionally and consistently so that we can be able to handle what life throws at us. We can have the capacity to do more. We can have the capacity to impact more. We have the capacity to influence more. We have the capacity to realize the outcomes that we desire. When that continues to bubble over, when that continues to overflow, it leads us to sign number 2. We're living in fake health. And just like Alex talked about, you don't turn it on or off, we don't turn our health on and off. You don't have good health or bad health. It's not a light switch, it's a continuum. And so the thing that we have to think about is that if we go and we look on the far left side, we've got death and disease. This is where we're being treated for something. We've got diabetes. We've had a heart attack. We've got some form of chronic illness. We're being treated for it. But if we go to the other side of the continuum, on the far right side, this is true health. And this might be something different for everybody, but it looks something like this. We wake up in the morning full of energy, we throw on our clothes, we go get our workout done, we come home, we get our kids breakfast, send them off to school. We've then got our to-do list for the entire day. We're mentally clear, we're focused, we're energetic, meeting with all of our clients, taking on all of our listings. We come home at night, we get our kids off to football practice, soccer practice, ballet, dance, the parent-teacher interview. Maybe we go do a social outing of our own. We connect deeply with our spouse, we put our head on our pillow, and we do it all the next day. But the thing is that 90% of us live in this space called fake health. Disease-free, but symptom-full. The headaches, the nausea, the irritability, the anxiety, the weight gain that we can't figure out, the inability to sleep, the energy loss in the afternoon, the loss of libido, all of the things that we don't desire, but we justify. That's what it takes to be a mom. That's what it takes to be a dad. That's what it looks like to be an entrepreneur. That's what it looks like to be a real estate agent in this market. That's what this takes to build a big empire. All lies. All lies. And the sad part is the longer we stay here, the longer we justify it, the faster the window closes to ultimately be preventable and go into true health, to when all of a sudden the window shuts and it throws us into that death and disease bucket. Because we didn't get diabetes overnight. It was something that was earned. We didn't all of a sudden have this chronic illness. It was earned. We didn't go to bed one night and wake up 50 pounds overweight. We made decisions unintentionally, but consistently, that got us an outcome that was inevitable. But here's the cool part. The same intentional decisions that are made consistently through a system can get us inevitable outcomes that we desire. And so when we start to see the sequencing of this, chronic stress, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, positive, negative, real, perceived, the body doesn't know the difference. The only response it has is ultimately to create chronic inflammation. Inflammation that creates chronic symptoms that we justify, call normal, ultimately send us into the outcome of 71% of deaths in the United States. The leading cause of death is chronic illness. When we start to look at entrepreneurs, real estate agents fall into that space, that number jumps to 83%. We earn our health or we earn our illness. And sign number 3 is, what island are you on? Are you in Sacrifice Town, where you sacrifice a really great night's sleep to get a few more emails out? Do you sacrifice eating at regular intervals over the course of the day because you're just too busy? Do you sacrifice that kid's soccer practice or that soccer game or that family event because you've got all of this stuff going on? Or are you in Averageville, where maybe your business is crushing it, you're on a high, you're so excited to be a part of Real, and you've absolutely changed your life and things are just working. But yet if you looked yourself in the mirror and you got really honest with how you were feeling on a day-to-day basis, you're just on the same trajectory as every other average American, with a life expectancy 25% less than every other developed nation in the world. For the first time in human history, the United States is going to see a 3-year decrease in both male and female average lifespan. First time in human history. And all the numbers show that we are on trajectory for a 4th. We earn our health or we earn our illness. Are we on Abundance Island, where there's more than enough time, more than enough energy, more than enough resources to have a really successful business and our health, to have a really powerful family and our health, to have deep, deep relationships and our health, to find true fulfillment and have our health. And so I want to dive into what that solution looks like, because show of hands, who wants to live a life by default? Nobody, right? That's not what we were built for. It's a life by design. And this is what most entrepreneurs who have ultimately figured this out, that are performing at the level that you desire to perform at, they've identified a system to be able to operate at. And the first thing is awareness. Awareness as to what's actually going on in their lives. Awareness as to what's actually happening within this vessel. Who can sell this house? I would hope all your hands would go up. Sharon literally handed you the system yesterday to be able to do it. All that would happen is you have to be aware as to who your buyer is. Would you show this home to somebody who wants to move into a brand new luxury home that they don't want to put any money into? Of course not. But you would probably bring a buyer that wants to put $1 million into something, have a big lot, they've got a family, they want a fixer-upper. It's all about awareness as to what your client wants, but yet we fail to understand what the awareness of our body is. And you heard me talk about it before, but your body has that language. And that language is heart rate variability. And why I love this metric, as I was going through my postgraduate research into my doctoral work and really started to dive into heart rate variability, it was helping us become so aware as to what is your body communicating? What's it actually going through? How is it adapting? And so when I started to think about how to explain this, how to make this something so simple that we could actually take this and start to understand what was happening in our day-to-day lives and how our body was adapting to it, I found heart rate variability. And so the definition is, how is your body adapting to stress and strain mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally? Because you can look at this number and you could be in a fight with your spouse one night, you could run a marathon the next day, your kids could go to college the day after that. That's a heck of a week, by the way. And you could be contemplating what it is that your purpose is the day after that. And your HRV curve would look the exact same every day. Your body doesn't know the difference, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress. And so this literally becomes the daily KPI for your health resilience. It is a number that quantifiably can say, hey, Justin, hey, Peter, hey, Sarah, I'm not adapting really well to stress or strain. I need a change in the habits and behaviors in which you're engaging in. And so when we see an upward trend in heart rate variability, it means, hey, we're adapting really, really well. If we see a downward trend, it means we're not adapting really well, and we need to make a change. And so you might be asking, okay, where can I find this? If you have a Whoop band, if you have an Oura ring, if you have a Fitbit, a Polar, a Garmin, you can easily access this. It's right there. It's got a bunch of algorithms to it sometimes, but I want you to toss those away and just look at the raw heart rate variability. Who has an Apple Watch here? I want you to pull out your phone. I want you to go to Apple Health app. I want you to go to that bottom right-hand corner and click on Browse. I then want you to click on the middle. It's going to say Heart. And then I want you to click on Heart Rate Variability. And what you're going to be able to see is you're going to be able to see a day, a week, a month, 6 month, and a year trend. And we can literally go back to that previous slide, and we can say, am I trending upwards? Am I stagnant, or am I trending downwards? And all of a sudden, when we start looking at this, and we can say, hey, if you're 40 years old, 40's on the bottom, HRV's on the left. If we could all of a sudden say, if you're 40 years old and you don't have an HRV of 40 to 75, your body's communicating something to you. If you're 50 years old and you don't see an HRV of 35 to 65, your body's communicating something to you. And so now you're seeing quantifiably something that is actually articulating and helping you understand your body at a better level as to the habits, the behaviors that you've been engaging in, to the subjective components of a life by design that we talked, or a life by default, that we talked about earlier. Who's brave has their Apple Watch open and their data open and wants me to do something live with them right here. All right, in the pink. Just come up here with me. I love it. What's your name? Rose. Rose, pleased to meet you. Awesome. Do you want to stand up here with me? All right. So this is Rose. Let's give Rose a clap. All right, so you give me permission to talk through this?
Yeah.
Amazing. So what Rose is actually showing, I don't know if you guys can zoom in on this, but what we see from Rose over the last year is actually a really nice upward trend, okay? So in the first part of the year, it was pretty stagnant, and then it dropped in May. Do you remember what happened in May at all? No. If I'll think about it for a second, I'll come back to that. But then over the course of the summer, it rose. Do you have kids, Rose? Yes. And your kids were at home over the course of the summer? And then were you able to send them away to school and kind of get them out of your hair a little bit?
In the summer?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Exactly, right. And so if we now take a look back at 6 months, and then back at the month, we see Rose over the last month is starting to come in a downward trend. And so I'd love to talk, can you talk me through your last week, Rose, in coming out here?
Well, my last week, we went to Lake Tahoe for a couple days without the kids. So was there like a downward
perfect,
trend?
thank you. Perfect, how's that?
Can you guys hear me?
There we go.
Okay.
So Rose actually has a really unique downward trend over the last week coming here. And a downward trend that is quite exponential. And so Rose, talk us through your last week.
It was my birthday, and Steven took me to Lake Tahoe without the kids.
I love it. I love it. And so when we see that, were you staying up later than you usually do at night?
No. We were hiking. We were doing like outdoor stuff.
Outdoor activities?
Yeah.
Great. Did you partake in any alcoholic adult beverages?
No.
None. Did you wake up early in the morning?
Yes.
Awesome. Did you enjoy some time connecting with your spouse?
Yes.
Awesome. I love it. So when we start to see this, we see this beautiful now upward trend throughout this week.
Yeah.
And so now you can start to use this data. You can start to look at this information and start to guide what it is that's actually happening. Let's give Rose a hand. Thank you, Rose. And the reason that I like this is because what gets measured ultimately gets managed. And then what gets managed improves. And so if we think about what we just did with Rose and we think about this with anybody else, you're able to now have a number that can actually start to guide you and say, hey, you know what? This is an alert for me. I need to make a change in my life. I need to start adjusting what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis based around what it is that my body is communicating to me. Number 2 is ownership of time. Time is the only resource that's non-renewable. We all have 24 hours in a day. We all show up a certain way. What's the thing that protects the asset? Our health. If we can optimize health, then we can protect the asset, which is time. And when we show up this way, it is the direct intersection point of responsibility and accountability. There's so many people, and you might relate to this, is you're willing to take responsibility. You've gotten so much information here on the last few days, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna be responsible for this, I'm gonna go back, but you're gonna go back to the same environment in which you came here. And we're gonna show up next year in the same position. It's because we've missed the accountability piece. But then we know the other people that have the accountability measures in place, they've got the coach, they've got the team, they've got the people around them, but there's always an excuse. I'm too busy, I couldn't figure it out, I didn't understand it. It's the intersection point of accountability and responsibility, of being able to say, hey, I desire something different. I want to show up differently. I want to have a different level of energy. I want to have a different outcome. And then put the accountability places in measure. Making sure that we can step up in a real powerful way. Because guess what? We don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And our outcomes are simply a lagging effect of our habits and our behaviors. I want to tell a little story here. How many people are hockey fans? Love it. I love it. I love it. A few. So if we start to look at this, between the years of 1995 and 2005, there was a team called the New York Rangers who had probably one of the highest all-star casts that you'll ever find in terms of rosters. 80% of the team could have been captains on other teams. They were full of Hall of Famers, full of All-Stars, full of Stanley Cup champions. How many times do you think they made the playoffs in that decade? Or did I see one? It was twice. Then, right across the bridge in Newark, New Jersey, shout out New Jersey, you've got a team, still players that are good enough to be in the NHL, but a team of very young players. Not many All-Stars, not many individual award winners. But the team developed a system called the Nutrisome Trap. And the system was so good that the NHL actually in 2005 had to implement a rule that broke their system. How many times between 95 and 2005 do you think they made the playoffs? 8. And they won the Stanley Cup 3. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And your outcomes are simply the lagging effect of the habits, behaviors, and lifestyles that you engage in. And so when we think about what we have to do to develop a life by design, it was all about preparation. You have to prepare yourself for what's already prepared for you. We were all prepared for greatness, but ultimately you haven't prepared yourself in order to receive it. And so as I started to think about this, I wanted to come and put this as an acronym, something that could really kind of sink in. P is prepare. Purposeful priorities. Not everything we're going to go over here is going to be have a priority for you, but there is something that is going to be very meaningful. And I want you to identify that and make a change. R is replace. I don't want you to have a laundry list of things to do throughout the day. I want you to be able to replace habits and behaviors that aren't going to get you to where you want to go. They maybe served you for a season, but what got you here is not going to get you to where you want to go. E is expend. I need you to expend energy. I need you to expend time. I need you to expend resources. It's going to take an action. You're going to have to do something in order to realize something different. P is persistent practice. You can't do something once and become an expert. How many people tried to sell their first house and boom, away it went? Right? Persistent practice, consistently and intentionally showing up, consistently being able to come back to the game and say, hey, I have to learn this because I'm preparing myself for something far greater to increase the capacity where I want to go. A is accept accountability, making sure that you can learn and be held accountable to where it is that you want to go. R, rest, reassess, and refine. So often we're just go, but we don't take a moment to say, hey, is what I'm actually doing serving me? Is the system I have in place actually working? And then E is expect. I can never get over how many people fail to expect the outcome that they've been desiring when they've been willing to prepare. And if we don't expect the outcome, then how can we expect ourselves to prepare consistently? And so as we think about this, it requires a mindset shift. And there's only 4 mindsets in my opinion. Impossible, possible, probable, and inevitable. You've heard me say that word a few times. I need you to leave here knowing there's only one option: inevitability. Because if you develop a system, if you create habits and behaviors that are ultimately intentional and consistent, your outcome is inevitable. But realize that with every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and it's just as inevitable that you won't accomplish it if you do not put appropriate system in place. Sharon gave you a great system to go and sell more homes. I guarantee you, you go and put that system into place when you leave here, you're going to come back next year selling more homes, feeling more confident, and more deeply engaged. But I will also guarantee you that if you don't use that system and you don't operate from that book, that you won't sell more homes, you'll be more discouraged, and you'll be more frustrated. The same thing for your health. The same thing for the performance in this area. And so I want you to leave here differently. But the only way that you can leave here differently and take ownership of that statement that you said, I am different, is if you choose to live different. There needs to be a change. How many of us are like this? I followed this guy on social media for years, so I figured, what could go wrong in real life? And so as we start to make this personal to you, because all this is great, you're like, Justin, I get it. I need to prepare. I need to be consistent. I need to be intentional. But what does this mean? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for Joe, who's going back to Arkansas? What does this mean for Sandy, who's going back to New York City? What does this mean for Colin, who's going back to Florida? So I want to break some common beliefs. And I just grabbed a few random ones. I'm going to pull some from the crowd here as well. Who's heard cold plunging is awesome? But it only works if you post it on social media. Right? Cold plunging is always good. The colder, the better. Well, actually, no. Because getting cold exposure is actually a stressor on our body. So there should be actually a timing in when it's appropriate if we want to actually get the benefits that are coming out of it. So maybe we shouldn't actually cold plunge unless our heart rate variability is above our 10-day average. That can be a very simple framework. Different than what the world tells us. So many things that the world tells us is healthy is actually holding us back. Getting 8 hours of sleep is the minimum sleep requirement. Well, actually, no. We actually sleep in 90-minute cycles. And if we need 5 cycles of sleep every single night, the math actually adds up to 7.5 hours. So I'd rather you get 6 hours or 7.5 than 8. So we're not waking up in the middle of a sleep cycle. We're not giving ourselves this groggy feeling. How many people have slept in on one day of the week where typically they're getting up at the same time and they wake up and they can't shake that fog throughout the day? Couple hands? Yeah. That's that feeling. DNA testing determines your health outcomes. Right? I got one of those DNA takes because I'm at 85% water and 8% dirt and 7% dog pee. DNA testing does not determine your health outcomes. I was sitting on a panel with a couple Harvard doctors, and they cited this study that said kids that grew up in households with obese parents were 80% more likely to be obese because of their genetics. And I let them go along, and all of a sudden I said, can I interrupt here? I don't think this has anything to do with genetics, because can any of you tell me what the obesity gene is? Crickets. There is not an obesity gene. It has to do with the environment in which you operate in. And so all this does is help us understand our body in a deeper way. Drinking water hydrates you alone. Actually, the more water we drink, it can actually deplenish the nutrients in our system, because we actually can't take the water that we're drinking, bring it into our cells without electrolytes. So we have to figure out, how do we get the electrolyte balance into our body? How do we get that correct? Caffeine is great for energy. The crazy thing about coffee is that, and caffeine, is it has the exact same neuroreceptor binding site as adenosine. Adenosine binds to our neuroreceptors in our brain and tells us to calm down and goes to sleep. Caffeine has a half-life in our body of 8 to 10 hours. So if we drink 200 milligrams of caffeine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, at 10 o'clock at night, we still have 100 milligrams active, binding to those sites that should be available for adenosine to tell us to fall asleep, but rather now it interrupts our sleep. And because now we can't get into the deep stages of sleep, we wake up groggy, our circadian rhythm's all off, and it continues a perpetual cycle. Naps make you groggy and tired. Actually, naps can be one of the best things for you. But here's a quick hack. If you take your average sleep time of when you go to sleep at night, and then you take a look at the average time in which you wake up. So 10 o'clock at night, say you go to bed, 6 a.m. you wake up, 8 hours, put 4 hours into the middle, so 2 a.m. is that average middle time. Take 12 hours and put a P on that, so 2 p.m. 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. is your ideal nap window of either 15 minutes or 90 minutes. And so all of a sudden, we can now take these common beliefs that the world has told you are healthy and make them personal to you and create a change. And so I've got these 4 pillars of ownership, and I want to go over these for you so you can now choose what priorities are for you. What priorities are for you? And I'm going to make it super easy so you don't have to read those. Number 1 is the foundational pillar of training and movement. Your workout's completed 2 hours before bed. 30 minutes of intentional, undistracted training per day. That doesn't mean we're texting or emailing while we're riding a bicycle. 90 minutes of zone 2 conditioning a week. That means just a nice light pace, somewhere between 60 and 70% of your average heart rate. Sprinting 1 time a week. Strength training 3 times per week. Getting your heart rate above 80% for 20 minutes a week. Moving every 90 minutes. How many of us feel like we're chained to our desk and we can't actually get away? Walk for 5 minutes after every meal to create a steady blood glucose. 10,000 steps per day. I don't need you to do all of these, but I need you to start somewhere. I need you to choose something different. We go to the second pillar in mindset. 15 minutes of meditation per day, 15 minutes of learning-based reading, 15 minutes of reflection, 15 minutes of positive visualization, 15 minutes of gratitude, 1 mentorship connection time per week. How are you developing this mindset of resiliency so we can gain capacity in how we think, because our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress? Nutrition. 3 hours after, this is one I didn't tell you. So, concept of intermittent fasting. How many people are intermittent fasters out there? Some? Yeah. How many of it tried it, it worked for a little while, and then it stopped working? Some more hands. How many people tried it and was like, that is not for me, I am hangry by noon? Some more hands, right? So if we actually started to create a circadian eating window and we stopped eating 3 hours before bed so that we ultimately could get the best night's sleep, and we have 400 times more melatonin in our gut than is produced by our brain, so it actually doesn't create any issue in the depth of sleep that we can get into. So we stop eating 3 hours before bed, we get a better night's sleep, we start eating 3 hours after we wake up. Ultimately, now we've got a 6-hour fast that's done intentionally, added to the 7 hours of sleeping, we're all of a sudden having a 14-hour fasting window without even trying. 3 meals a day. How do you fuel yourself throughout the day? 2 pieces of fruit with a protein source a day. 1 big salad with a protein source per day. Do we make and have intentionality around portion sizing at one of each meal? Do we walk for 5 minutes after every meal? Do we focus on eating in this order? Protein, fats, and then finally carbs to regulate blood glucose. You've heard me talk about that a couple times now. How are we acting? How are we behaving? What are we doing intentionally? And if we do it intentionally and consistently, we're going to get outcomes that we've been desiring forever that have seemingly been out of our grips, out of our reach. The pillar of hydration. Do we have a water bottle we carry around with us? Do we have half our body weight in ounces of water every single day? Half our body is made up of water. 80% of our brain, our heart, and our lungs are made up of water. It's pretty important. Do we have some type of electrolyte mix of potassium, salt, or magnesium throughout the day? Element or Redmond is a great brand in which no sugar is involved in any of it, that can just go in and help your body hydrate at the cellular level. Is there a caffeine curfew that we have on our day so that we don't end up in that crazy cycle that I talked about? Self-care, 30 minutes of self-care per day. That could be literally anything that you do for yourself. I love this story. I was working with a realtor who had a massive platform. And he goes, Justin, for the first time, I can't get creative of what my new video on YouTube is going to be. And I've just got this brand new $80 million penthouse in New York City. that I have to sell. I've got to do it, but I can't figure out how to get creative. I said, well, when's the last time you did something for yourself? He laughs. He goes, I've got 5 kids. I've got this massive deal that I've got to go over. When do I have time to do this? I said, I need you to literally go for a walk out on the concourse every single morning for 20 minutes, shutting off your phone, shutting off everything, and just do this for you. All of a sudden, 6 days later, he calls me, he goes, I've had the best idea ever. All he did was poke a couple holes in his cup to create capacity for him to do what he's already naturally gifted to do. And the same thing happens with you. We've got the foundation of environment. What's your environment like around you? Are you watching the sunset at night? Are you waking up and watching the sunset in the morning? Do you have a morning routine? Do you have a night routine? Do you have a sleep environment that you're aware of? Do you connect with somebody deeply? Do you engage in a faith-based community weekly? Do you have 5, 10-second hugs a day? You guys are in a great place to start that. But you become a concept of your environment. Sleep. Do you have a consistent sleep and wake time? The easiest way to create the optimal circadian rhythm is going to bed and waking up around the same time within 30 minutes of each other. Do you have a 3-2-1 rule at night? 3 hours before bed, no food. 2 hours before bed, no more work. 1 hour before bed, no boob light. And then making sure you don't hit the snooze button so that, again, you optimize that circadian rhythm. Do you have a morning routine that gets you outside, that gets your feet on the ground, that gets you exposed to fresh air, that gets you exposed to bright light? Do you have a sleep environment that you've intentionally created? Do you create a parasympathetic buffet, basically just a bunch of relaxation activities like journaling or stretching or reading that you can do at night that start to bring you down? And then lastly, immune response. Do you get 100 minutes of heat exposure every single week? Do you get purposeful cold exposure like we talked about earlier? Do you get direct sun exposure throughout the day? Do you get contact with the ground to create alkalinity within the body? Do you have a multivitamin that's been curated for you or even been determined what you should be taking? Do you have an immune protocol that's based on heart rate variability throughout the day? These are the things that we can do. And when you put these foundational principles in place, when you create habits and behaviors that are focused on this, that's when we can start leveling you up. That's when we can start going into testing. That's when we can start understanding how your blood glucose is actually operating. That's when we can start getting you engaged in the tools. But you don't need to go to this level if we don't even have the foundation built. We need to build a foundation on stone so that as soon as the storms come, we can weather them. We have the capacity to handle and do what it is that we're trying to do. When you leave here, I want you to be different. I want you to think differently. I want you to see things differently. I want you to operate differently. Because you can have success and significance. You can have financial freedom and health optimization. But it requires a life of ownership. Creating a system to operate your life off of. How you act, how you behave, the habits you engage in that are intentional and consistent to create an outcome that's inevitable. Life is better this way, I promise you. I've seen it in hundreds of thousands of people over the last 5 years. Hundreds of thousands of people. The reality that you're in today does not need to be the reality you live in tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. But it requires you to make a choice that is different. And I know that you can do that because you are all, starts with a D, different. We'll start it again. You can all do this, and I know you can. You can choose different because you are all leaving here different. Let's go real. It's been awesome.